Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the scariest thing you've ever witnessed in your life? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe. I was driving down a busy street, and the car in front of me didn't stop for a kid on the sidewalk. The woman driving the car hit the kid so bad that he spiderwebbed her windshield. I got out to provide aid. I helped keep his neck still and saw lots of blood and spinal fluid leaking from his ears. I could tell from my paramedic class he had really bad neurological damage from the impact of the car. I don't know what happened after when EMS got there. I left with my arms covered in blood. The kid was around 8 years old. My dad died of liver cancer a few years ago, and I barely made it home in time, as I lived in a different state. He had been in hospice care at home and was in an unconscious state by the time that I got there, so I kinda just sat next to him. We all knew that he was probably going to pass that night, and the hospice nurse told me that he was probably just waiting on me to come home before he passed. It had been hours, and I knew that he was in pain. I remember turning toward him and said, "It's okay, Dad. You can go now." Immediately after, he opens his eyes and looks at me and then died. I will never forget seeing the life leaving from someone's eyes, especially since it was my own father. My friend and her then boyfriend had just woken up one morning and taking their newborn baby downstairs to breakfast. Her ex was holding their daughter when he slipped, and their 8-day-old baby bounced down the stairs. The way she described it is horrifying. I'll cut to the chase and say the baby is fine. She's now a woman in her 20s, and while she has scars and health complications, it's not something noticeable unless you know her really well or she chose to divulge. But when it happened, she died multiple times before being revived. From memory, she died in the ambulance and then twice more while operating. She was so touch and go for days that the hospital advised them to prepare for the worst, and while they didn't specifically tell them to pray, they made sure they knew where the chapel was and had the chaplain introduce himself. They were lucky in the sense that social services cleared them while their baby was in surgery, so when she was in NICU, they could see her. Apparently, that's the second worst sight she's ever witnessed. I attended illegal squat raves in London from my early teens and only stopped about 6 months ago. I'm nearly 20 now, and looking back, they were amazing at first, but they slowly turned very dark in the last couple years due to one group of organizers only caring for profit and not the raver's safety. I've seen people get stabbed, my friend's head smashed in, and he pulled my hand to his head and my fingers went through his flesh and touched his skull. I was intoxicated and didn't realize what was going on. I've fallen through a ceiling, walked in on orgies, watching people basically looking at the rig, watching minors get preyed on by men, the list goes on. I'm pretty sure the scene is falling off, and I hope it does, if that's the way it's going to carry on. Free party scene is much better. Listening to my beloved grandfather crying while he begged me to kill him due to dementia. He had suffered non-stop grand mal seizures due to scar tissue in his brain from a previous stroke. I cradled him in my arms, telling him it would be all right while the ambulance came. Day after day, night after night, he would beg us to kill him. He had MD and would forget that he could no longer walk and would cry and say, "I only need a little help. Why won't you help me?" The VA was fucking useless. Eventually, he had a major heart attack, and I watched him die as I applied chest compressions and begged him not to go. It felt like I was doing that for hours, trying to keep the proper rhythm, seeing the light leave his eyes, waiting for the ambulance to come. My mom later told me it only took them less than 5 minutes, but in that moment, it felt like a lifetime. He had a DNR I hadn't known about, and apparently my grandma tried to stop me, but I didn't hear her. I was completely focused on trying to save him. When I made my way for the EMTs to do their job and they just stood there, my brother had to drag me off him and out of the room because I was crying and screaming and shouting at them. to do something. I don't remember that part, only gaining clarity sitting on the floor of a different room. I would have respected his wishes had I known. During an emergency, I simply jump into action and then fall apart afterwards when there's nothing left for me to do. I wish I could turn back time. And instead of losing my mind, I just hold him and sing to him and tell him how much he meant to me. Hearing is the last sense you lose, and I'll never forgive myself for breaking down and him hearing me cry instead of hearing me tell him how much I loved him. My grandma was sick in hospital, and I was 2 months postpartum and was experiencing severe PPD. My dad just told me she's sick and to come see her soon, but now how sick she really was. I took a 14-hour flight with a 2-month-old and went straight to the hospital. She had been admitted before, so I knew what to expect. When I entered, I thought I was in the wrong room, but I saw her name there and quickly realized it was indeed her. I looked at her feet and hands that used to be so beautiful, but were all swollen and blue from the needles. She had lost a lot of buccal fat and didn't look anything like she did. I went into panic and started asking the nurse what's wrong with her, because she doesn't look like herself. I think I lost control of myself. I am a very calm person and a physician myself, so I see this every day, but I just couldn't see her like that. I can't forget her lifeless face. I sometimes wish I hadn't met her in this state. Some of these were tough to read today, and I had a little lump in my throat, the early ones. And again, this next story is the only one that has any animal stuff to it. So for those of you very sensitive to stories of animal cruelty or abuse, this is the only one. The rest of it is all human-based. I'm like 99% sure. I think this is the only one. So anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Cold day here in New York, but hope you're all doing great, and we will see you tomorrow. I was a virtual counselor for the Trevor Project suicide prevention hotline for LGBTQ+ youth. I was part of the online team who chatted on the website. I guess I didn't see an event transpire, but I saw the child's words and feelings typed out in real time on my screen. Every single one was heartbreaking, and I hope so much I helped. There's one that will forever stick in the front through, and that's a 12-year-old I was chatting with. The kid was the age of twin boys at the time, 12. They had attempted suicide before, and they were describing their intense feelings to me and detailing their plans to do it again and succeed. I see the chat box in my brain like it's scrolling real time. Their reasoning for why, their intense emotion. 12 is just a baby in the whole circle of life. Seeing their messages come in saying what they wanted to do, I can't explain it. Obviously, it's anonymous on both sides. You can use whatever name you wish and no identifying info, but I pray I helped, and I pray they're still here. I did some work with a local county sexual A on minors team. I had a certificate that allowed me to present my findings in court, etc., and I could non-destructively search hard drives, etc. It was interesting work. I left when I had my daughter because the CSAM was just too much. I couldn't look at a little girl getting effed, R'd, then go home without wanting to never leave my little girl alone with anyone. I helped bring down some egregious shit, and I'm proud of that, but I'm also proud that I got out before it started to F with me too much. It's been a long time now, but damn, that was rough. And you cannot unsee things. In 2018, I was driving on the freeway in San Diego, and all of a sudden traffic came to a stop and I saw smoke. I thought it was a brush fire. As traffic began to funnel on the right-hand side, I saw the smoke was coming from a massive car crash in the fast lane. Car pieces everywhere. One was on fire, one was flipped upside down. The damage was super spread out. The car was on fire, probably 250 meters from the flipped car. Traffic was funneling really slowly. I saw people running to help. It didn't hit me that there were no police or fire department. I didn't realize it. It literally just happened. As I'm scanning the damage, I saw body parts, a leg, a torso, I started to hyperventilate and a man motioned to me, "It's okay, it's okay." When I got home, I just cried. Found out later it was some 18-year-old with a suicide wish that purposely drove the wrong way up the carpool exit lane and crashed head-on with a mother and her 12-year-old daughter. He crashed into them with so much force that his car was in pieces. Their car was the one on fire, and the other car tried to swerve and flipped over. It really messed me up. It made me realize how fast it can all be over. May the family rest in peace. My 17 female boyfriend, 19 male, and I were returning home from a day trip to shop in a nearby town. It had rained really hard for 30 minutes, and it was common knowledge that the road or highway we were going to take flooded every time it rained. By the time we got to the highway, the rain had slowed to just a sprinkle, but it was still flooded with probably 6 inches of water. I was really scared. I wanted to wait for the water to drain before continuing on, but BF assured me that we'd be okay and that he would only go 10 miles per hour, and he did. As we're inching along, he was explaining what hydroplaning was. It sounds like an inappropriate topic considering the circumstances, but it calmed me down for some reason. Suddenly, a little red sports car just zoomed past us at what must have been the road's normal 50 mile per hour limit. I just commented to boyfriend that they must not be from around here when the red car swerved toward an oncoming semi. It managed to right itself for a second. Then it was literally lifted up 6 feet into the air and smashed into the side of the oncoming semi. Pieces of the car just flew everywhere. It was like seeing a cheap plastic toy car smash into a brick wall. Surreal. Cars aren't supposed to do that, and my brain just refused to believe what my eyes said they saw. The semi stopped. We stopped. The few cars behind us both stopped. I remember seeing crumpled up pieces of red metal in a pile by the side of the semi. I watched the driver get out of the cab and walk towards the pile. I felt so bad for him. I don't remember boyfriend getting out of the car, but I remember him opening the driver's side door and very sternly telling me, "Do not get out of the car." I said okay and kept staring at the semi. Years later, BF, then husband, told me that the reason he didn't want me to get out of the car was because there was a virtual river of blood running down to the storm drain, and he didn't want me to see it. 50 years later, I can still see this as if it happened yesterday. I've been terrified of traveling on highways ever since. I don't drive. I was walking home from the gym and saw 5 ICE officers jump out of 2 unmarked cars behind a delivery worker on a motorbike. They were very rough with him, and he was screaming that he was in the US legally on a valid visa and did nothing wrong. About a dozen people started crossing around, and one guy loudly shouted why they were arresting him. ICE claimed it was because his plates were expired. The guy loudly shouted, "No, they aren't," and zoomed in the camera. One ICE officer pushed the guy, telling him to shut the fuck up, and the sound of his head cracking against the brick wall he hit will haunt me forever. They ended up cutting the zip ties of the delivery worker, whose face, covered in scratches, his shirt torn, and tears streaming down his face, will also forever haunt me. This is not who we are in America. I've prayed that guy is okay, like most delivery workers. I know it was his second or third job, and he was just trying to make ends meet. This drama we're going through is not okay. I won't also bring up the video and zoomed in look of Renee Good. Horrifying. The feeling I get from this is also the same feeling watching George Floyd be murdered. I refuse to lose the humanity in my fellow human beings. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Witness in the sense of being present to my aunt killing herself. We both suffered from alcoholism. I got sober and she didn't. The last year of her life, I knew something was off, and so tried to be a steady support for her. She lied about everything going on, but I knew, because of how close we always were, that she was dying. I tried getting her treatment, but she didn't want it, and I knew I needed to just be there for her while she secretly drank herself to death. She called me 2 years ago in November, all excited, saying that I should come home for the holidays, and I said I would, because unspoken between us was that this would be it. So I drove home and only saw her twice that visit, but it was strained. I was so sad, but kept acting happy so she could see me happy. I drove back home 32 hours away in a day and a half because I couldn't get away fast enough. Didn't hear from her in January and kept telling my mom, but at that point it was normal not to hear from her. Then got a call that they found her dead, half on her bed with my picture next to her on the nightstand. I was 6 years old. I thought I was a real tough guy and decided to watch some men butcher a cow. I saw everything, starting with the bullet to the head. They cut open the body cavity and yanked out the guts, then proceeded to skin the entire cow. Now, here's the part that traumatized me. They cut off the head and set it upright on a table. Those eyes kept staring at me. The cheek muscles were still twitching. It's an image burned into my memory. I still see those eyes staring at me. The cleanup of a murder at the last appointment building I lived at was right outside my window. His body was partly moved to where I was supposed to park my car. He had been stabbed. They tried to paint over the blood to clean it up, but it kept coming through. I have a hard time seeing red concrete or a sidewalk that has a new patch because I know it's a crime cleanup. They left the poor young man's body in the snow for 4 hours with just a tarp and the blood all over the place. His bloody shoes sticking out. The apartment complex didn't renew my lease after that, but I didn't know him or anyone. Maybe that's not the only most disturbing there is, but also the drive by there, but that was still a better place to live than where I do now. The bedrooms were unstable. When I was 8 and my brother was 10, we were at the playground. I was sitting on a swing when I saw my brother on his bike come speeding down the nearby big hill and suddenly flip over the handlebars and come tumbling down. I sprinted over to him. His face looked like pepperoni pizza. His eyes were closed and he wasn't speaking, only making this awful hum sound. My mom was there and stayed with him. One of the other parents there told me to run home and get my stepfather. And another adult there went with me. We all drove over to the park just as the ambulance arrived. Someone must have called 911. I remember paramedics asking me questions and I told them it was my brother and I saw the cash. My mother went off on the ambulance with him and I went home with my stepfather. Then I went to get a glass of water, but immediately dropped it and it shattered on the floor. Until then, I hadn't even noticed I was shaking so bad I couldn't grip anything. He ended up being fine, but they told me later he threw up in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. He must have had a concussion. We all were so glad the helmet was useful. I remember my brother kept saying he thought he was dreaming as it happened, but now as adults, he surprisingly says he doesn't remember any of it. I was working on a giant industrial boiler under construction of Granger, Wyoming. We were near the top installing sheet metal, and this poor guy stepped through an open spot where someone had removed the grating but didn't rope it off. He pinballed all the way down, hitting structural steel piping, etc. As he went, falling about 175 feet. We went down to assist, but it was useless. He was mangled and very dead. Also saw a guy try to unblock a steam line on an active boiler when the blockage released and hit him with superheated steam, scalding him badly. His skin started to melt off. That might have been the worst one, actually. I usually go on night walks with a friend of mine to lose weight and get fresh air and enjoy hanging out with my friend. It was about 10:17 p.m. when I ran into my friend who got off work and we decided to walk early. We live across the street from a park and fire station next to a small apartment complex. Anyways, we were walking east of the park and my friend was showing me videos of what happened at his job about some people who did something when I noticed a guy walking north of the street from a small apartment complex area. I tapped my friend, who was too focused on the video he was showing me when the person then turned toward our direction, and I was worried when I could hear him yelling something out his mother and swearing. I was trying to get my friend to look when he finally noticed. We decided to cut through the park to get away from him when he started following us. We started to pick up speed and head to the fire station when he started running at us. I pulled out my clock and pointed it at him and told him to leave us alone. He refused and yelled at us to kill him so he could see his mama. I tried to reason and talk to him and try to calm him down, but he pulled out a knife and slowly started walking toward our direction. I had my Glock pointed at him the entire time while pleading for him to back up, that it doesn't need to end like this at all. Then he charged at me, and my friend and I pulled the trigger. 3 bullets struck his body, 1 in the leg and 2 in the stomach area. My friend called the cops while I kept the guy at gunpoint. He tried to get up, but he couldn't. The police came 5 minutes later, and the fire department ran over from their station when the call came through. Honestly, sad that I had to do it, and I wish he never did it. I pray that God can forgive me, and I hope the guy is alive and getting proper help he definitely needed. I think there are a few scary things. My first house was definitely haunted, literally. Every friend who visited that house agrees. The attic light used to turn on and off by itself, which could be seen through the vent in my parents' hallway. There was a thing in the mirror, but what really scared me was the balcony. The doors could be locked 3 ways: the knobs, the deadbolt, and these locks that went into the floor and door frame. I was incredibly paranoid about those doors because it was super easy to climb onto the balcony, so I locked them religiously. One night I got up. I can't remember why, maybe for food, maybe it was noise, but I made my way out to the kitchen and the doors were rattling. I saw the locks, they were all engaged. Nobody was on the other side of the glass. All of a sudden, it went still before the doors slammed open. I just kind of stood there for a minute, expecting a break-in or something, but there was nothing, not even wind. Before my father died, he was having trouble sleeping, laying down, so he would sleep in his recliner in the den. The den was sat right off the sunroom, where I had a friend over sleeping for New Year's. I woke up to him shouting and a loud crash as he collapsed from a heart attack trying to get to the recliner. I slid down our icy driveway to get to my neighbor's house to get them to call 911 while my mom called from our house. I knew he was dying. Everyone was trying so hard to reassure us kids that he'd be fine, but I knew. Later, the next morning he had a stroke and went into a coma. 23 days later he died. I still hear the sound he made as he fell. After my dad died, my brother started drinking. For perspective, he passed when I was 14. My brother was 10. I tried to warn my mother of his drinking and drug use, but he was her golden child, and I was a troubled teen who was just starting to display pesky signs of schizophrenia that were ignored by literally every adult in my life. So it was easier to take her rage out on me than address the actual problems he was dealing with. When I was 17, I woke up to my mom screaming. She found him unresponsive. Alcohol poisoning almost killed him. I called 911. He survived, but I'll never forget seeing him just laying there with his eyes rolled back in his head, shaking, thinking that he might not make it. My life evened out quite a bit after my brother went to prison, and I bought a house with my best friend, so the signs of schizophrenia became much less present as I got older. Psychosis came much less frequently until she fell in love and left me. Nobody noticed the signs until I was 37 years old, and someone noticed that as I was falling asleep, I got into a very unnatural position and just stayed there. I don't remember this at all, but 3 people witnessed it. For context, I tried desperately as a teen to get help. I kept something and knew that something was deeply wrong with me, but nobody would listen. I begged to go to a psychiatrist, and when I did, she outright told me, "I'm not equipped to help teenagers with schizophrenia, so I'm referring you to my partner." He diagnosed me as a dramatic teenage girl, even though I was showing every classic sign: hallucinations, delusions, losing time, etc. He put me on Zoloft and just kept increasing the dose as my mind disintegrated. The scariest bout of psychosis was easily 2 years ago. I woke up one night kind of mid-hallucination. My mother was crouched next to my bed, urgently whispering to me urgently. I panicked and started begging her to explain, tell me what was going on. I was so scared. She faded away. I sat up. She was real. When I was 10 years old, some dude was peeking through my window at me in the middle of the night. My bed was right underneath it. He somehow managed to get the window open and got into my room. By then I had raced to my parents' bedroom and woke my dad up, who chased the dude out of the house. It doesn't haunt me, but I'll never forget it. The dude was caught by my dad and other men who saw the chase and my dad screaming for someone to stop him. Turned out he was a pedo who preferred young girls. He wanted for R and several other young girls across the country. Back in those days, the cops were disappointed that the men in the camp we lived in, deep in the bush, didn't met out their own justice. Where we lived, a body could be disappeared deep in the woods and would never be found. If the men knew what he was wanted for, I'm sure some of them would have made the dude permanently disappear. The police and the courts got to deal with him instead. I was 13 and lived in a wealthy neighborhood with mansions and random cul-de-sac with normal houses where my family lived. It was midday, and I was jogging around my neighborhood, and then there was this small truck that was driving the opposite way. I was going. It slowed down to the point where it was going like 5 miles per hour, and the woman inside already had her window rolled down. Where she was at the point where we intersected, we were just watching each other just from a couple yards away, and she just has this look on her face, like her mouth was open, like she was paralyzed from shock with a slight smile. I fucking ran and didn't look back. Years ago, like 30 plus years ago, my family was vacationing at a massive reservoir that was nicknamed America's Playground. We'd been out on the lake water, skiing and exploring the side canyons off the main channel. We'd noticed some cliff-dwelling ruins that my dad wanted to climb up too. Amateur archaeologist me was also very excited to climb up and see them. As they weren't listed in the tour books and looked relatively untouched, they were pretty far up and it was a steep climb. No one else wanted to climb, so they stayed with the boats and went swimming. As my dad and I were climbing, we both glanced back down at the boat and saw a large circular shadow in the water heading toward the boats. We both glanced up to see absolutely no clouds, then glanced back down and watched the shadow pass under the 6-foot diameter ski tube my sister was floating in. The shadow was as large as the ski tube. My dad and I exchanged a "you saw it too" look, confirming we'd both seen it. No one else saw anything. No one felt any movement in the water around them. We never did figure out what it was, and obviously I think about it a lot. I snuck onto Antietam Battlefield with like 6 to 8 other people on the anniversary of the battle. It was at least 9 to 10 p.m. when we arrived, and we definitely weren't supposed to be there. It was cold and foggy. Visibility was low AF. My male friends were dicking around, running through the cornfields and stuff, jump scaring us girls. We laughed it off all good. Around 12, we were getting ready to leave and had heard what sounded like music and talking. The fog had lifted a bit, but not enough to see clear to where we heard the noises. We started to head back off the battleground to our cars, and then the fog shifted and we saw what looked like a campfire. Then more, relatively. We left thinking maybe it was a reenactment group camping there for the anniversary. This was 2006, so we didn't have the internet in our pockets to check. We wind up at the Waffle House and asked the waitress if they did anniversary reenactments. She said yes until dusk. Park should have been empty. It didn't sink in what I may or may not have seen that night for a bit, but I'm pretty sure it was fallen soldiers imprinted on the land. I grew up a military kid and only saw family besides my parents about once a year. I spent a lot of time with my cousins and grandparents when we would visit, but was never super duper close to anyone due to living a very different life around the world instead of our small, dying hometown in Michigan. My dad ended up having his last PCS to South Carolina, and they retired there and will still live there. My maternal grandma died in 2007, and my grandpa died in 2016. My mom flew up to Michigan to help her sisters clean out and sell grandparents' house and get all that settled. I stayed at my mom's house while she was gone to take care of her pets. I don't recall where my dad was. Maybe overseas. Can't remember when he retired, so might have been TDY. I was lying on the couch reading a book and distinctly heard my grandma laugh. When it registered that I had heard my deceased grandma laugh clear as day, I was just frozen for a minute, processing. Looked around the house to see or for anything that might have made that noise. Decided I had hallucinated it. Would deal with my possible psychosis later and went back to my book. When my mom came back, she was filling me in on the family drama and details on her trip, and I mentioned in a flippant way that I had heard Grandma laugh. I've heard her before too, my mom said. My mom is very religious and the type of person who believes in demons but not ghosts, if that makes sense. We let the statement lie and went back to discussing her trip. A year or so later, when my mom retired, they moved way out in the country, like gravel road, no street lights, country. Never heard Grandma in their new house. There are a lot of deer out there. My grandma loved deer. She had many little figurines, deer pillows, deer paintings, deer gardens, statues, you get it. I imagine she's too busy, happy in the forest with the deer to haunt the new house. I'm not a believer, but my grandma was very religious, loved to tell stories about how wonderful it will be when she meets Jesus. Not in a morbid way, focusing on death, just the joyous day that would be. I'm glad she's laughing somewhere. Sorry if this wasn't scary. I found a partially burnt license plate and photos while metal detecting in the woods on my property last week, if that helps.